Hello and welcome. My name is Sanket Upadhyay from the Red Mic, and you're watching me on TheFederal. Delimitation exercise, which is due, there's a lot of deliberation and conversation around it, uh, is an exercise which has given a lot of heartburn. At least the talk of it has given a lot of heartburn, particularly in the southern Indian states. Is this a much needed exercise? And at the same time, the manner in which it is being done may not be desirable. Now, this is an argument that a lot of people have started raising or making. I have with me the convener of Bharat Jodo Abhiyan, Mr. Yogendra Yadav, who I believe from your statements that I have read, Mr. Yadav, you seem to be one of those people who feel that the exercise is not unnecessary, but the manner in which it will be commissioned, at least as of this moment, may have disastrous consequences. Am I correct in this assessment?
Thanks, Sanket. Delimitation can mean two different things. One is routine redrawing of boundaries, which the Constitution provided for, which is necessary because within a state, take Haryana for example, there is a lot of concentration of population in Gurgaon and Faridabad. So clearly, Gurgaon and Faridabad constituencies should become smaller in terms of size so as to maintain population parity. This is a routine exercise about which there is no dispute. This took place in 2006-7 as well. It is likely to happen now. There is no problem. But there is another component to what is called delimitation, which is reapportionment of seats for different states in the Lok Sabha. Uh, that exercise was also provided for by the Constitution. Constitution said every 10 years it should happen. But in 1976, it was frozen for 25 years by constitution amendment. Uh, in 2001, when it came up for renewal, reapportionment, at that time, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee's government and the parliament by consensus said, all right, let's postpone it by another 25 years. Uh, Now we have reached a point where it is once again open, 2026, after the census, it will be open. So it cannot be done now. The Constitution Amendment says that after 2022 6 census or any census thereafter, the delimitation can take place. I'm saying that while it was originally envisaged in the Constitution, this is something that should not be done. And my simple position is let us now assume that the quota of seats given to each state is frozen as if it was a line drawn in stone, as if it is inviolable, as if it makes, as if it's a component of a federal contract written into the Constitution. So that I'm saying should not be changed.
I believe, Mr. Yadav, you seem to be proposing a sort of an amendment to the set paradigm of a delimitation exercise that there should be no more boundaries redrawn of constituencies because obviously the base of it is population. So wherever there will be a higher population, there will be more seats. And that seems to be the fear of South Indian states, particularly Tamil Nadu. You are suggesting that this be frozen till eternity, that the number of seats, 543 Lok Sabha seats, must remain the way they are forever. Now, how will that work? That flies in the face of an entire delimitation exercise.
No. It's not. It doesn't fly in the face. All I'm saying is that what has been happening for the last 50 years should now continue. So all I'm saying is that an existing constitution amendment that took place in 1976, which was reiterated in 2001, should be reiterated now. And instead of now putting a date on it, just forget the date part of it. Why open it after another 25 years? While many others are saying, South Indian states are saying, postpone it by another 30 years. I'm just being very frank and straight and recognizing a principle there. I'm saying, instead of saying postpone it by another 25, 30 years, let's simply say we are freezing it forever. That's not such an unusual position.
How
Constitutions
does
all
that
over the
help, Mr.
world.
Yadav? How will that
It
help?
helps. It because it actually addresses something very deep. My argument is driven by consideration of national unity and national integrity. You have two kinds of cleavages or divisions or fault lines in any country. You can have a country where one cleavage is horizontal, the other cleavage is vertical, cleavages cut across each other. Students of politics and society say, all right, these are benign systems. If cleavages cut across each other, they are not very threatening because one cleavage would work in one direction and another would cut it across. The end result would be all right. But
Hmm.
if cleavages coincide with each other, or more or less coincide with each other, then they are threatening. That fault line can one day become a division. In
Hmm.
India's case, that is what we are looking at. We have currently three divisions, three potential fault lines in the country. I would not call it divisions. Three potential fault lines which have been handled in a fairly wise and uh, sensible way. One fault line is language. Hindi versus all other non-Hindi speaking languages. This sometimes becomes intense, sometimes it remains moderate. It has become slightly intense now because of the three language formula and somewhat unwise position taken by the government, which is seen to be Hindi imposition.
Hmm.
The second fault line is economic, which is South and West India versus North and East India. The gap is huge in terms of per capita income. The gap is 1:3.
Hmm.
Many of the southern states are three times richer than states like Bihar, Jharkhand, and Orissa. So that's the second fault line. The third fault line is a political fault line. Areas of BJP dominance, which is Hindi heartland plus Gujarat, and areas where BJP's dominance is contested. It is not unquestionably dominant.
Hmm.
Now, if you look at these three lines, they don't cut across each other entirely. They do not overlap 100% because one line has north and east, the other line has East India as a non-Hindi speaking, and so on. But
Hmm.
there is one solid chunk which is on this side of the line, and another solid chunk which is always on the other side of the line, which is north and south, which is Hindi speaking states and the southern states. In all the three divisions fault lines that I spoke of, in all these three, Hindi speaking states are on one side. And on all these, the southern states are on the other side. So this is the north-south question, which is often talked about. And this
Hmm.
is why north-south question becomes important. Now,
Hmm.
my argument is that in any country, you should be very careful. If you have three lines which kind of overlap with each other, what you should be doing is to find ways of addressing it. What you really don't want is to open a fourth line as well, which would again coincide with this. Now
Hmm.
look at the impact of delimitation. Suppose the seats were reapportioned to each state as per their projected population of 2026. We don't have a census as yet, but thanks to population studies, we have a fairly robust projections of what India's population will be when the census is done 2026. What will be the impact? If seats were reallocated in proportion to population, Kerala's seat will come down from 20 to 12, almost half, 20 to 12. Tamil Nadu from 39 to 31. Karnataka would lose two seats. Andhra and Telangana would lose four each. Orissa would lose three seats. Bengal would lose four seats. And Punjab will lose one seat. Just look at the pattern. Isn't it almost exactly the Hindi non-Hindi division that we speak about?
Hmm.
So the problem is this, that delimitation following a constitutional mandate, following a reasonable principle of seats in proportion to population, would have the potential effect of accentuating an already existing potential division in the country. And as someone who is concerned about the unity of the country, long-term ways, long-term vision of the country, I would urge every Indian to forget the short-term impact, to don't look at the calculus of who gains, who loses in the short term. Simply focus on the long term. And in the long term, I would urge that we should we should just freeze it as it is.
Forever.
Remember,
Okay.
the language question was handled in 1965, 66 by amending the constitution and by saying, all right, don't fear, we will not impose Hindi on you. So you see, please remember, when India began its journey in 1947, every expert of politics said India will disintegrate in 10 or 15 years. There were books published in 1960s predicting India's collapse in the next few years. It did not happen. Soviet Union collapsed. India did not collapse. Now, this is not a magic. This is not a accident. It happened because of policies of accommodation that were practiced in our country. Accommodating diversity is at the center of this Indian model. And I'm simply saying that that is a principle that must be carried forward. And we should have one more act of accommodation this time. And this accommodation, to my mind, is a double accommodation. So it's not only that North India is sacrificing. There is a double bargain here. I'm saying North Indian states should not ask more seats in lieu of the greater population. And similarly, South and Western states must not ask more federal revenue because of the tax contribution. So both of them are gainers, both of them are losers. It's a double compact. And this is something that will strengthen the foundations of Indian unity.
Now, Mr. Yadav, two or three things on the basis of what you have said. Don't you think that you will be dubbed as someone extremely alarmist when you say that Karnataka will lose this much, Tamil Nadu will lose this much, Kerala will lose these many seats, especially at a time when the Union Home Minister has very categorically mentioned that no one is losing any seat. Tamil Nadu is not going to lose any seat.
I'm not being alarmist at all, Sanket. I'm just actually giving you population projections. So these are not my figures. I'm not saying this may possibly happen. There is a paper, if you want to see. It's a paper from Carnegie Foundation, written by political scientists who've simply looked at population projections. So no one has disputed these figures so far. Now, there is a trick. When Mr. Amit Shah says that no state will lose seats, he has a trick up his sleeve. And I tell you what the trick is. The trick is, all right, Kerala is 20 seats. Kerala will remain 20. Don't worry. Tamil Nadu is 39. Tamil Nadu will become 41. So be happy. Uttar Pradesh from 80 will go to 125.
So in proportion, they will increase more. Okay.
Lok Sabha will become 850. Kerala will remain 20. So what is the net effect is that in proportional terms, Kerala will be equivalent to 12 seats out of 543. What Mr. Amit Shah has not assured, and the Prime Minister has not assured so far, if they do, then we should stop talking like this. Once they say that the percentage share of each state will not change, then it's fine. Then I would immediately agree, and then
there I come to my next question, Mr. Yadav. The thing is, the entire exercise of a delimitation is to improve governance. You will have smaller constituencies. You'll be able to cater more effectively to the needs and desires of those people in those constituencies. And that being the vision of having smaller, which is why people advocate for smaller states as well, because they're easy to govern. Do you feel that right now the procedure by which delimitation is done, that procedure can also be changed? Let the criteria not only be population, but be something else so that nobody loses out. At the same time, you don't harm this issue of governance also. If you freeze the delimitation exercise till eternity, eventually these constituencies are going to swell up in the north, and then they will become unmanageable.
Sanket, as I said right in the beginning, my problem is not with delimitation. Delimitation and redrawing of boundaries is a normal exercise which should continue, regularly happen. My Amendment is only to one part, one slice of what is called delimitation, namely reapportioning of seats. There are many things that should improve. For example, if you want to increase the number of assembly seats in most of these states, there's absolutely no problem. Why should Haryana have 90 seats? Haryana can have 150 seats. That does not change the federal balance. If Haryana has 200 seats, it doesn't make any difference. Why should Uttar Pradesh be stuck at 400? So number one, the number of assembly seats should be increased so that no MLA should represent more than 1 lakh voters. That's already a fairly large. So I agree with that. Number two, especially in hilly areas and so on, geographical size should also be a very significant consideration, not just the population size. Number three, there are fears of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is an American thing where political constituencies are given weird shape in order to suit one political party or one possible representative. In America, it happens because the outgoing assembly itself makes the boundaries. So they come up with funny kind of shapes. In India, that was not the case in the past. But we have recently seen drawing of constituencies in Assam, which I call the first instance of gerrymandering in India's history. So we need things to prevent that. All that should happen. Many other fine tuning need to happen. The reservation of seats is done through a system which is not entirely transparent. It should become more transparent. So a lot of improvements are needed, and I have absolutely no problem with that. All I'm saying is that the business of reapportioning the seat should stop. Having said it, I am the first one to acknowledge that the reapportionment of seat to begin with was not a bad idea. It is based on a principle. The principle is one person, one vote, one value. And if a constituency is 2 times bigger than its neighboring constituency, then the value of the vote is half that of the neighbor. So I agree that there is a principle there. It's a democratic principle. But in the larger national interest, I would allow the federal principle to trump over the democratic principle in this particular instance.
So, at a national level, freeze the delimitation exercise forever. Now, Mr. Yadav, what happens in your understanding if the central government does go ahead with its version of the delimitation exercise? What will happen?
We don't know what is the central government's version as yet. No one has clarified. Mr. Amit Shah has given some statements, which are somewhat ambiguous statements. He also used the word pro rata, which doesn't quite make sense in this instance. So we need to understand. But if the understanding is all right, after 50 years now, let's go back to things that used to be before 1976, and on the basis of that, we do population-based reallocation, which will result in all the things that I'm saying, either directly or by or indirectly. You make Lok Sabha has 850. The exact impact will be exactly the same that I'm saying. Basically, the impact, let's understand. I want our viewers to understand. Currently, Hindi-speaking states do not enjoy majority in the parliament. Out of 543 seats, all the Hindi states put together have 226 seats. But if this were to happen, then Hindi states become 259 out of 300 and out of 543. Required is 271. They are only 12 seats short, which can always be managed. So in a sense, the potential is that you can win only the Hindi-speaking states and acquire a majority in the parliament. Now, that's something that we should guard against. The same thing would happen even if you make it 850 and give 425 seats to Hindi states. The same effect would happen. This balance, federal balance, is what we need to be very careful about. We need to ensure. If it is not done, what would happen? Now, that's speculation. What would certainly happen is deep resentment in South India. What would definitely happen is a sense of alienation. Okay, so they think that they can run the country on their own. And mind you, because of the 3 other fault lines that I have already mentioned, this would congeal, it would bring together a sense of unease that people in South India feel anyway. Some of it is justified, sometimes not justified. But these things come together. And as someone who's interested in the long term unity and integrity of India, which is an extraordinary experience of democracy in deep diversity, I would urge the government and other political parties not to be guided by short term interests, but to please take a long term view of the Indian unity.
It's interesting that you mentioned, and this is going to be my last question. It's interesting that you mentioned language, that Hindi speaking constituencies will be a majority. So you can rule the country if you have managed a good score or a good strike rate in Hindi, the Hindi belt. In today's Indian Express, Mr. Yogendra Yadav has written a fascinating piece today. It's called Lok Bhasha, not Raj Bhasha. And you seem to be advocating a case where there should be no official language like Hindi. All Indian languages must be the official language.
Exactly.
Why do you say this?
This does not come from any anti-Hindi sentiment. I'm a Hindi wala. I speak right Hindi. I love my language just as any other Indian would love their own languages. But the official policy of Rajbhasha, Hindi, is on paper the official language of this country. In reality, as you know, English is the official language of this country. In reality, in English is the sovereign. English hegemony persists in this country. And I'm saying every time you raise questions about English dominance and want to do something to temper that, the question of Hindi imposition comes in. Oh, this is a conspiracy by Hindi walas. So I'm saying just get, just be over with it. This Rajbhasha business has not served Hindi. If anything has helped Hindi, it is Bombay cinema. If anything that has helped Hindi, it is cricket commentary, TV soap opera. These things have really helped Hindi. Government of India has not. It has only created resentment. It has created a sense of inequality and hierarchy. And it has distanced Hindi from other Indian languages. I would want the language question in India to become the Bhasha question. The Bhasha question, as you are Anantamurthy used to put out. And he said these are Bhashas versus English. That to me is the most important question. And in order to do so, I'm saying just be done with this official language business. Hindi should not remain the only official language. If need be, make all the 22 languages in the Indian in the eighth schedule of the Constitution. Make all of them the Rajbhashas, and then do something about addressing the real language question in this country, namely the supremacy, sovereignty, imperialism of English language, which we Indians are unwilling to address.
So you basically mean that English, in a weird way, is binding all the discourse together. For instance, if
Uh,
you look at the South, uh, they would want to speak their own language. They're okay speaking English, but any other language is an imposition. You seem to suggest that even English is a function of an imperialistic mindset, a colonial mindset.
Sanket, I'm not suggesting it. It is the fact. There are certain things are arguments and certain things are facts. The simple fact is that we live in a country which is so dominated by English, and this is exactly what colonialism does. This is exactly what imperialism does. It begins to look like a fact of nature. We forget to even notice it. It is the furniture in the room. We forget to notice the fact. When we say South Indians want English, please remember it is a tiny South Indian elite. Just like you and I, Hindi speakers, are speaking to each other in English, and someone can say, oh, Hindi walas are speaking in English. No, sir. It's a tiny Hindi elite that happens to do it. For 98% of Hindi walas, this facility is not available. And what is
Correct.
true in this instance is also true of 90% of people in South India. They speak in their own languages. Most South Indians are more multilingual than most North Indians are, but
Correct.
multilingual in their respective languages. And I'm saying that independent India should be putting Indian languages in a position where they drive this country's education, this country's thinking. And yes, it is my considered opinion that this domination of English has not only created a class divide in the country. English is the surest guarantee of maintaining inequalities in this country. As Ram Manohar Lohia has said, English is not, the problem with English is not that it is colonial. The problem is that it's a feudal language in India. It is a language of inequality. And two, it is a language that has seriously curbed our creativity. And if we want a Swaraj in ideas, we have to promote our languages. So I'm not into banish English anymore. That's an old slogan. But promote our languages. And
Correct.
if Hindi Rajbhasha is an obstacle in the way, be done with it.
Mr. Yogendra Yadav, thank you so much for joining us. It was a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.